I would have a total panic attack meltdown and say, well, now I can't eat anything anymore because everything is messed up. And in that moment, I would want to crawl out of my skin. I would want to tear my skin off just so that I could disappear into nothingness because I could not bear being in my body. Hello, and welcome back to the Live Label Free podcast. I'm your host, Livia, a neurodivergent eating disorder recovery coach that's on a mission to help neurodivergent individuals and their loved ones turn their mess into their message. And going off that line of turning every mess into a message, that is really why I'm recording this episode today, because you're probably wondering, what does laundry have to do with autism and eating disorders? And, while at first sight, at the surface, it may seem like that's kind of weird and those things are not associated. But last night, I had a pretty extreme laundry disaster, and for some people, it may not be extreme, but for me as an autistic person that has a very select few items of clothing, because I'm a minimalist, I don't like having clutter, I don't like having a lot of options because that overwhelms me and I would never be able to choose what to wear if I had a lot of clothes. Last night I kind of screwed up basically all my clothes because I made a mistake with the laundry. And the reason that I'm talking about this today is because something that I noticed while I was, spiraling into panic and spiraling into anxiety and feeling really lost and stuck and going into this, all or nothing black and white thinking mode of everything's messed up. Now, none of my clothes are good anymore. Now I need to throw everything away, even the clothes that, weren't included in the laundry, and I need to, replace my entire wardrobe. As I was having these thoughts, which I'll obviously elaborate on and give you kind of the full laundry disaster story in a moment, I was very aware of the fact that a lot of these thoughts were very similar to the thoughts I had during my eating disorder and very similarly manifested into food, because food is a tangible entity and movement is a tangible entity, and I felt like I could somehow, cope with these thoughts and almost make the thoughts tangible when they manifested into food and movement. So anyways, kind of going back to, my intention for recording today's episode is to kind of pull back the curtain and give you some insight onto, well, what are some of these autistic thought processes that you're having in a moment where something doesn't go as planned, or where something, doesn't necessarily become a disaster, but, something happens that's really unwanted and almost puts your nervous system into fight or flight mode. Because I think once you can kind of, obviously I'm speaking to both neurodivergent individuals, so maybe you have lived experience with this, or maybe you resonate with what I'm saying, but for any caregivers or parents or, professionals that are wanting to learn about how the autistic brain works, how the neurodivergent brain works, and how that can manifest into food and exercise, I think this is going to give you insight onto how to have compassion and to help, whether you're supporting yourself or a loved one, really disentangle these autistic traits, these autistic thought processes from what are typically on a surface level seen as eating disorder behaviors. Because when we can understand the root of where something's coming from, obviously it's a lot easier to solve a problem if you know where the problem is even coming from. So that all being said, I'm going to cue the intro music right now, and we will get into what my laundry disaster taught me about my eating disorder.
Gotta put one foot in front of the other, and you'll be around the corner soon.
Welcome to the Live Label Free podcast, where we talk about autism, ADHD, eating disorders, existentialism, and everything in between. I'm your host, Livia. Now let's get into it. Okay, so first of all, we all need some context here. And I think, my brain is going into a billion different directions right now, per usual. And I'm like, I don't even know where to freaking start with this. But I always know, because I'm an author, I'm a storyteller, I'm a writer, I know that when I just start telling the story, insights and pathways just like naturally enter my being. So that's what we're doing. So basically what happened? Well, I am back in the Netherlands right now. A few months ago, I was in Boston, but it turned out there was mold in my apartment walls in Boston. So obviously that was not healthy. And a lot of people who I've told are like, how did you find out? How did you know? And I have my autistic hypersensitivity to thank for that. I mean, you know how when you do something or go somewhere new and you feel like something's not right here, something's off, there's no way to like describe what it is, but you just innately feel that? Well, I think autistic people have a really strong sense of that. And I think that's maybe sometimes why it's so hard to express concepts for us in words, because we feel things in our body without necessarily knowing what they are. And that's kind of, what I experienced when I was living in this apartment in Boston, is I was just feeling kind of off. And this off feeling obviously well, not obviously, because you don't know what it was like, but it escalated the longer I was living in this apartment. I started experiencing really weird symptoms like bloody noses, and I never get bloody noses, mind you, but like 3 times a week I was having bloody noses. I was experiencing really, really bad migraines. I mean, I generally already have chronic pain. I pretty much have a headache every single fucking day. So if you're autistic and experience chronic pain too, I'd love to hear your experience. If you're listening on YouTube, be sure to drop a comment and share what your experience is like with chronic pain as an autistic person. Or if you're just listening to the podcast on Spotify or Apple, be sure to send me a message or an email. You can contact me via the contact form on my website, livelabelfree.com/contact. Yeah, like I said, I love to hear from you. It makes this podcast more of a conversation. But anyways, aside from, the usual chronic pain that I'm used to experiencing, this was like a new level of chronic pain. So I was having the chronic pain in my neck and in my back, which was just leading to horrible migraines. But I was also having like this full body, like muscle tension, which, I mean, I like to move my body a lot. I like to go to the gym, I like to run, I like to bike. I'm a very active person, and, that's due to me just needing that for self-regulation. I know we frequently use the term stimming in the neurodivergent community, which stands for self-stimulatory behavior. But I feel like much more appropriate is to say self-regulatory behavior, because I think that's ultimately the goal of stimming, is to regulate yourself, to regulate your nervous system. And for me, movement is a very, very, very important form of regulation, which obviously during my eating disorder kind of spiraled into unhealthy measures, unhealthy extremes. But in recovery, this is where I really feel like treatment was not neurodiversity affirming to me, is because, I wasn't allowed to stand, I wasn't allowed to walk. They would always say, sit down. If you want to get up, if you want to pace, it's an eating disorder behavior, which can be the case because often these things overlap. But I think it's very important to, explore and come from a place of curiosity rather than judgment. And, instead of judging the behavior immediately as an eating disorder behavior, is, being curious, what function is this serving that's maybe separate from the eating disorder. But anyways, pacing and moving aside, I was having these full body muscle aches, and I knew, this is not from the gym because it felt like I was basically just had leg day, but like every single freaking day, my whole legs would like ache. It was just super weird. I already have insomnia a lot of the time, but like, again, this was like insomnia to a new level. So yeah, those were just some of the symptoms I was experiencing while I was living in Boston. Oh yeah, and I was also having like really blurry vision, which was just freaking weird because I am very detail-oriented. My eyes are very sharp, and I see everything. My family used to call me the princess and the pea because I would notice every single freaking thing, vision aside. But, I would feel things, I would hear things that no one would else even notice. Which leads me into the pathway of FBT, and I remember my mom would read these books and go on these like forums for, how to support your teen through an eating disorder. And at the time, we didn't know I was autistic yet. So, I forgive her for not knowing that and not taking a neurodiversity affirming approach to my care. But on a lot of these parent forums later, she told me, I would read, parents would say, you need to like sneak cream and butter and oils into your kids' food because they won't even notice, but you need to like get more calories in them. But the thing is, like, with autistic people, we will fucking notice, and it's so dangerous and harmful if you're a parent to sneak food into your kids' food. I mean, to sneak calories into your kids' food, because we are like princesses, princes, non-binary version of that word of royalties. We are like royalties, and the P, we do notice everything. So if you're going to sneak calories into your kids' food, you're going to lose trust with them. And if you don't have trust, well, then you don't have anything. And that's a cornerstone of recovery from an eating disorder, especially as a neurodivergent person, is you need trust and you need safety, because ultimately eating disorders, I've talked about this before, eating disorders are adaptations to a lack of trust and safety. So anyways, I kind of want to move out of Boston, no pun intended, move away from this Boston story, because that's obviously not the point of this laundry disaster. But basically, I knew there was something wrong. I discovered that there was mold in the walls, and actually the day I moved out of my apartment, the guy who was helping me move actually confirmed it. He was like, oh my god, those are freaking mold spots. So yeah, I obviously had to get out of there ASAP. I ended up living in Boston in that apartment almost for like 5 months, which I'm kind of like shocked, because that's like way too long being exposed to mold. So again, if you have experience with this, if you've ever been exposed to mold, do leave a comment, send me an email, because yeah, any tips are welcome. So where am I now? Like, what even happened? Well, as I'm sure many of you listening know, Boston is hella expensive, and to think I was paying like $1,800 a month to live in a mold-infested apartment, not to mention there were creepy crawlies every night, which, yeah, not very favorable. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go back to the Netherlands for a bit, because I can live at home, quote-unquote home, for free pretty much. Well, obviously I help around the house and stuff. So basically, I put all my furniture into a storage unit and booked a one-way ticket to the Netherlands. So now I'm back at home living with my mom and younger sister, and I'm not going to go too deep into how that's been, because let's just say there's a reason I moved out 4 years ago. But anyways, coming back, again, I've said this so many times, let's go into the laundry story now. So last night, I had to do laundry, and I usually do my laundry always the same way on the same setting, because that's how my autistic brain works. It's predictable. I know that if I do my laundry on that setting, nothing will go wrong. But here's kind of where the twist comes in. So my sister had put like a pile of clothes on top of the washing machine, and there were also some like cloths, kitchen towels next to it, and her clothes were white, and apparently they were supposed to be like washed with the white stuff, but the kitchen towels were like colored, so they were just like all mixed up for some reason. They were just like on the washing machine, and it had been on the washing machine for like multiple days. And my room, like in this house, I'm staying in the guest room, is like across from the washing machine, so I just like kept noticing those clothes and thought they had to be washed, because no one was doing it, because they're not like me. But anyways, I was like, okay, it's time for me to do my laundry, and I don't have that many clothes at all. Like, I'm very minimalist, because I do not like having a lot of items. I do not like having lots of clutter, and that's one of the reasons, honestly, why it's really hard for me to live at home, because my mom is a low-grade hoarder. She cannot get rid of freaking anything. I mean, she keeps stuff that I'm like, why the fuck would you even keep that? Those are like the things that like I immediately would throw in the trash. But anyways, I don't have that many clothes. So whenever I do my laundry, I only do it once or twice. Yeah, pretty much once a week. I just like will save everything for one day because I just want to do a wash cycle, and it never fills the washing machine anyways, unless I'm like washing my clothes with like bed sheets or towels and that kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, well, this pile of clothing that's on the washing machine, maybe I can just like take it with my wash so we can wash it all at once so that this can finally be sorted out, because it was like really starting to bother me that there was just like a dirty ass pile of clothes on the washing machine for multiple days. It just like visually I'm like, it needs to be clean, it needs to be organized, I need to have like a clear field of vision. So I did want to check that it was okay for me to wash that stuff. So I remember asking my mom that stuff on the washing machine, because I didn't even know whose it was. Turns out, like, the white stuff was my sister's clothing, and the kitchen towels were just, there was a lot of kitchen towels because I need to use a lot of kitchen towels to constantly clean the kitchen because, again, my mom and sister are not like me. They are messy and dirty, and yeah, again, there's a reason I moved out of this place 4 years ago. But I remember asking my mom, should I take that wash with my wash? Like, should I wash it all together? She was like, yeah, that's fine. So I was like, okay, well, now there's like, the washing machine is full, so I'll turn it on to a bit like higher cycle than I usually do when I only have my like half load of my clothes in there. So I thought I put it on like 30 degrees or 40 degrees because I like to usually wash my stuff pretty cold or medium, not too hot, because I have a lot of like athletic wear in there because #comfy and sensory friendly. Like, I do not own jeans. I do not own anything of denim material. I do not own anything tight. It's usually like polyester shorts and like loose tank tops. Like, that's what I wear. So yeah, I don't like to wash that hot because that will crinkle it and that will ruin it and that will make it shrink, which, yeah, foreshadowing what basically happened. So anyways, I thought I put the wash on 30, 40 degrees. Well, it turns out I accidentally put the dial of the washing machine on 90 degrees. And mind you, this isn't Fahrenheit, this is in Celsius, so that's pretty fucking hot. And if you have like fragile clothing that needs to be washed cold, that's pretty much just gonna fuck up your clothing. So I did the wash, finished the wash, I didn't notice anything until I took it out of the dryer later. So I put the clothing, after it was washed, which I think the damage had already been done, I put the clothes in the dryer and I put it on low heat because, again, that's what I always do because I don't want to mess up my clothes. And actually, my shorts, one of the shorts I'm wearing right now, which are like athletic shorts, they say, machine wash cold, tumble dry on like lowest setting. So, I just follow the instructions and that's what I do. So that's what I did. And when the dryer was done and I was taking everything out, I noticed what the actual fuck, all of my clothing had shrunken to, I'd say, not 2/3, that's excessive, maybe like 5/8 of its original size, or like 3/4 of its original size. And all my shorts were like crinkled, like to the point where I was like, something has gone massively wrong. But not only that, like so many of my tank tops, like even my underwear that was usually like bright colors because I'm the rainbow girl and I like bright colors of everything, was like faded, like nothing was colored anymore. Have you read my book Rainbow Girl yet? If you're a longtime listener of the podcast, you've probably heard me mention my memoir before, but in case you haven't, let me tell you about it. Rainbow Girl, a memoir of autism and anorexia, takes you on my very personal and vulnerable journey of growing up undiagnosed autistic, how this led to the development of an eating disorder, and the steps I took to fully recover and turn my mess into my message. And while I could do the very autistic thing and go into several details of the book, I figured it would be way more valuable to read one of the reviews. Here's what Mireille in the Netherlands has to say. In a world that's only scratching the surface of the autistic experience with anorexia, Livia paints a candid picture of how she went against all odds to overcome her eating disorder and transform fear into strength. A must read for anyone in this situation, or helping someone in this situation, as is all her other online content. As a mother to a recently diagnosed autistic teenager with anorexia, this book gives me so much hope. To any medical professionals out there, please read this to gain immensely valuable insight into this complex interchange between these two conditions, so better help can be provided in the future. And now back to me. If you've already read Rainbow Girl and enjoyed the book, could you do me a 2-minute favor and leave a positive rating and review for the book on Amazon and Goodreads? It helps other people to find and read my story of lived experience, so that together we can bring more awareness and compassion to this prevalent yet misunderstood connection. If you haven't yet read the book, grab your copy of either the ebook, paperback, or audiobook of Rainbow Girl today by visiting the link livelabelfree.com/Rainbow Girl. So again, that's livelabelfree.com/Rainbow Girl. Now, let's get back to today's episode. So I'm like freaking out. I'm like, what the hell happened? Did I accidentally put bleach in the washing machine? Like, no, I just used the regular color detergent that I always use because, again, consistency of the autistic brain. So I was freaking out, and I don't even know what happened because I thought that I had put the wash on the usual setting, but clearly I hadn't. So I started looking up, what causes clothes to shrink and fade, and everything was, leading me back to, if you wash your clothes too hot, then that happens. So now, like, looking back, I'm like, yeah, the most likely conclusion we can draw from this is that I turned the dial to the wrong temperature, and I actually went back to the washing machine to like figure out like what could have gone wrong, and I put it on the dial that I thought I put it on, and like right next to that setting is the 90 degrees setting. Remember, 90 degrees Celsius setting, which is like practically boiling point. So yeah, no wonder it's gonna mess up your clothes. So I was like, that's really the only thing that could have happened. And I mean, I feel so bad now too for my sister, because even though there were only a few articles of clothing that I washed with my stuff, her stuff is messed up too. Her white tank top has turned into like a lilac color, which it probably got from the bright blue shirt that is now like a freaking faded gray, and that was one of my favorite shirts. So yeah, I mean, I feel super bad now too, because it isn't just my clothes that are now messed up, but some of her clothes are now messed up too. And you may now be hearing me say this word, messed up. And like I said in the intro of this episode, that word, along with some other, that messed up, I guess that's 2 words, that phrase, that word duo, along with some other thoughts that were coming up in my panic/meltdown/utter desperation, made me see a lot of parallels with thoughts that I was having during my eating disorder. So, first of all, I was so dumbfounded and flabbergasted and just shocked as to how I could have made such a huge mistake, even though it was an honest mistake. And if anyone else would have made this mistake, I would have been like, it happens to the best of us, it's fine. I was so upset with myself, and I was so, honestly, I don't even have the words. I still don't, because I'm still really just at a loss as to what to do. And obviously, there really is only one thing to do, and that is to buy new clothing and replace the items that I can now no longer wear. But going back to this idea of, messed up, I was I was going in all different directions with that, and I was seeing, my entire wardrobe is messed up. And I started thinking in very black or white. And I did this a lot during my eating disorder with my meal plan. If something had happened that had, slightly caused my plan to be different or caused a meal or snack time to be different, I would often spiral and say, everything is messed up. My whole life is messed up. And I would feel like this complete wave of analysis paralysis wash over me. So, for example, if I had my breakfast, which was like precisely planned at a certain time, my snack, which was precisely planned at a certain time, my lunch, which was precisely planned at a certain time, and then if we, went somewhere and my afternoon snack would be like 10 minutes later, I would have a total panic attack meltdown and say, well, now I can't eat anything anymore because everything is messed up. And in that moment, I would want to crawl out of my skin. I would want to tear my skin off just so that I could disappear into nothingness because I could not bear being in my body. That's when I would feel so trapped because I would not know any way out of this situation. And I think that is really a way in which losing weight and being in anorexia was a coping mechanism, because obviously an eating disorder has an incredible way of numbing you from feeling things. And when you are very malnourished, and in my case, I was very underweight according to BMI, which is obviously bullshit measurement index. But when you are malnourished and you're not within your healthy set point weight range, you almost don't have this sensation of, I want to crawl out of my skin, as much as I had that sensation when I gained weight. And when I gained weight in eating disorder recovery, I still mentally very much had an eating disorder and honestly had a lot of trauma after I weight restored in eating disorder treatment. I felt such an identity crisis. I felt so trapped in my body, and I felt really stuck. And that's kind of ironically when I felt such an utter sense of depletion and emptiness in my life, because I mentally still very much wanted to restrict and wanted to have an eating disorder again because of all the things it falsely protected me from, including the responsibilities that come with being healthy. But anyways, I just so clearly remember during recovery, that feeling of, I want to tear my skin off. And that was, a very, very, very prominent sensation I had for a long time during the weight gain process and after the weight gain process. And I think that this has to do, well, not I think, this, for many autistic people, this doesn't have necessarily to do with the, surface level fear of fatness, fear of weight gain. It's much deeper than that. It's much more nuanced than that. And it's, rooted in sensory overwhelm and feeling trapped in your own body. Because to the day, how do you say this in English? In Dutch, we say tot op de dag van vandaag, which means like to the day of today. So like up until today, my entire life, I have felt trapped in my own body. And I still feel that today. I mean, there is not a day that goes by that I wish that my spine could like turn into a zipper and I could just like retreat and just be like one with the universe. Because I know that in essence, we are all one with the universe. And I almost, wish I could experience that. Like what it would feel like to be nothing. I don't know if that makes any sense. And again, if you resonate with this sensation, drop a comment if you're listening on YouTube, or send me an email, livelabelfree at, no, I'm saying the wrong email, Livia at livelabelfree.com, or submit a message via the contact form on my website, because again, I love to hear from you, and I especially love to talk about these like deeper existential feelings, because I think in a lot of ways, my eating disorder was also like a proposed solution to an existential crisis. It gave me purpose at a time when I felt lost and felt that I was wrong and felt like I was a complete alien, which I still feel. Like I am convinced that us autistic people are from another planet, like that the stars collided during the Big Bang and like all the autistic particles are like spread themselves out and some of us like reincarnated and landed on Earth. And I actually got an insanely amazing book idea about what I'm saying right now. But anyways, that's kind of beside the point. But going back to this idea of, feeling trapped, wanting to tear your skin off, wanting to crawl out of your skin, I felt that hard last night after the laundry disaster. I had no idea how I was going to cope with the idea that I just had to buy new clothes, cope with the idea that I now need to go out and find said new clothes. I mean, I absolutely despise shopping for clothing. In the store, it's worse. I mean, online, I even really don't like online shopping because why are there so many options? I'm like, why can shopping, why can clothing not just be simple? And this is one of the reasons, when I find something that I really like, I will buy like 5 pairs of it or 5 items of it in like different colors just to spare myself the overwhelm of having to, feel different sensory sensations when I'm getting dressed in the morning. So anyways, I was, at a complete loss, and I remember telling my mom and sister, like, well, first of all, I apologized to my sister because I was like, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to ruin your sweater. And then I went to my mom and told my other sister, because my mom was FaceTiming my other sister, who's currently living in Spain, which I actually will be going there soon because I need to get out of this house. And I was saying, I don't know what to do. And they just didn't get it, because my middle sister is ADHD. She's not autistic. Although funnily enough, she was like the most understanding of the whole situation. She was like the most compassionate. But I remember all of them, my mom especially, was just like, you can just buy new clothes. And I was like, you do not understand. Like, it's not that easy. I don't want to buy new clothes. I liked my old clothes. Those made me feel safe. Those were what I trusted. Coming back to that main idea of safety and trust, right? Us autistic people need that, and especially we need that in eating disorder recovery. And I actually talk about this concept of safety and trust and how to apply it in recovery from an eating disorder as a neurodivergent person. I'm going to dive deep into this in my upcoming Autistically ED-free group coaching program, which you may have heard me talk about before. So you can sign up for the waitlist for that at livelabelfree.com/group. I still have a survey for you to fill out as long as, as long as the program isn't launched yet. You can give your input, you can share your lived experience so that I can make sure that as I create this Autistically ED-free coaching program, that it contains all the information and is tailored to your unique needs. So again, you can get on the wait list at livelabelfree.com/group. Now, coming back to the laundry story, it was just really, really frustrating not having my family understand just how sad I was. And obviously, like, I know being sad about the situation and saying, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have made that mistake. I can't turn back time. And I think for us autistic people, that can be so frustrating. And I think for me, I've had difficulty spending money my entire life. During my eating disorder, this was escalated due to, the scarcity mindset. And when you are malnourished and you're acting from this like survival mode, you don't want to spend resources, including money. But I think autistic people tend to innately have difficulty spending money because we don't want to waste resources. I mean, I don't know if anyone else does this, but also when I'm using toothpaste or yogurt or peanut butter or really anything, I don't throw away the container until it's like absolutely scraped out and empty, and it just can't get any more empty. So on top of, the frustration that I was feeling around basically having all my safe clothing be messed up, well, obviously, I have a few things that I can still wear, but this is kind of where the black and white thinking comes in, and I'll talk about this in a sec before I finish this money story. Part of the reason why I don't want to buy new clothes is because my brain keeps going back into this time spiral of, well, if you wouldn't have made that mistake, you wouldn't have to spend money on new clothes. And it's like, even though I logically know I can't turn back the time, my mind just keeps wanting to do that over and over and over. So yeah, anyways, I don't know where I'm going with that, but if you have any advice for me, if you've ever messed up your clothing or lost clothing, or someone else, like an airline, lost your clothing, I'm really curious as an autistic person how you handled this, because I know that I am not alone in not enjoying clothes shopping, and I know that I'm not alone in having difficulty spending money. But with this spending money, and I talk about this in my book How to Beat Extreme Hunger, that something that's really helped me in life with making it easier for me to spend money is turning the concept of money being a cost into money being a tool to invest in yourself. So for example, when it comes to books and courses and programs that I have done, and maybe you're debating to whether or not you want to buy my books, or you want to enroll in my courses or do my coaching, I stopped seeing, it as a material trade. So for example, if I buy a book for $20 or 20 euros or whatever currency you're in, if we look at that from a purely material perspective, we can say, oh wow, $20, what a waste of money for some pieces of paper. That's ultimately all a book really is, right? It's pieces of paper with text printed on it. However, when I started seeing, buying a book as an investment, saying, I'm going to buy this book that, obviously there's no guarantees in life, but that I believe will enrich me as a person and make me a better human, well, that's priceless. We can't even say that's worth $20 because it's worth way more than that. So that's something that's really helped me shift my money mindset, is to stop seeing things as a cost, but rather to see them as an investment. So yeah, I'm curious if this is helpful for you. Again, drop a comment, contact me, send me an email, whatever you want. But I love talking about, mindset shifts that help other people, and I love hearing your mindset shifts because I'm a lifelong learner just like you. I just promised that I would talk about the black and white thinking aspect of this whole laundry disaster as well, and how I saw so many parallels in my thought processes to when I had an eating disorder and when I was recovering from an eating disorder. And that was the thought that came up of, okay, well, now that I've messed up some of my clothing articles, all of my entire wardrobe is now messed up, and I need to start over, and I need to, get rid of every single thing I own, even some socks that, were pretty much unaffected. But I got this black and white, all or nothing mode washed over me, and I was like, I need to get rid of everything, start all over again, and buy all new clothes, because I can't deal with this in between. I can't deal with the fact that some of the stuff that I didn't put in the wash are still fine, and that some of my other stuff that I did put in the wash are not fine, and I need to replace those. So this is obviously something that a lot of people with eating disorders struggle with, is black and white thinking. In the case of anorexia, orthorexia, other restrictive eating disorders, it's, food is either good or bad. And what can often, trigger binge eating in autistic people is, oh, well, I've already eaten one quote-unquote unhealthy thing. I've already eaten past fullness. I might as well keep going now. And in the example I gave before about the meal plan and, having a snack be 10 minutes later, I would say, everything's messed up now. I can't eat ever again. My brain would spiral into that. And what would often help me was to say, okay, I'm just going to start over. I'm going to pretend the past never happened. And I'm just going to start fresh. And during my extreme hunger, I remember I was in this really, really extreme binge restrict cycle, or rather restrict binge cycle, because binges are a response to perceived restriction, either physical, mental, or emotional. It isn't just about caloric restriction, it's also about telling yourself you can't have something will often lead you to obsess over it and then maybe binge on it. But what would happen during my extreme hunger is every single morning I would say, okay, I screwed up yesterday, I'm just going to start all over today. I'm going to start fresh. And in the morning, I'd eat my quote-unquote healthy breakfast, and then I'd eat my healthy snack, and I'd eat my healthy lunch. But this like urge to binge would build and build and build and build, as obviously my hunger was building and building and building because I felt deprived. And then I would come home from school, and this was like 3 or 4, sometimes even 5 p.m. And I would just be so hungry, and I would start eating, and I would just open the floodgates, and I would just binge and just eat for 2 hours straight until I was so full and nauseous and could not move. And then I know that black and white thinking came up of, I have screwed everything up, my whole eating plan is ruined, and the only thing that would almost like keep me sane was this knowledge or like prospect that I knew I would start over the next day. Yay! If I didn't have to sit still for this recording, I'd be jumping up and down right now due to the fact that I am overjoyed to share that the Autism and Eating Disorders book bundle is here. What's this book bundle you speak of, Livia? Well, now that my Extreme Hunger book is out, and my cookbook with the gorgeous new cover is out, and of course, Rainbow Girl has been out for a while, and for those of you asking, the Dutch version is on the way. I've been updating all of my backend on my 2 websites, livelabelfree.com and livelabelfreebooks.com, to make everything more clear and accessible for you, my lovely listener. Because I know the importance of autonomy and being able to make your own choices when it comes to the books you read, I decided to create a mix and match bundle that allows you to choose any of my books in any format that you want to get a discount for, well, buying more than just one book. Whether you want to grab all 3 of my books or perhaps grab one of them in all the formats or some other unique combination, that's up to you. You can find all the details about this bundle at livelabelfreebooks.com and just click on the bundles tab. I'm so excited for you to gain more insights on the autism and eating disorders connection that I am so incredibly passionate about. And now, let's get back to today's episode. Obviously, at the time, while I was struggling, little did I know that it was this mindset of we need to start over tomorrow that was keeping me stuck. And I talk about this a lot again in How to Beat Extreme Hunger, how to make peace with those nuances from a neurodiversity-affirming perspective, because nuances are our strength, but when it comes to black and white thinking, they are also our weakness. That, what Shakespeare said, our greatest strength begets our greatest weakness. But anyways, yeah, that was a huge parallel that I noticed with this laundry disaster was, how this black and white thinking isn't just tied to an eating disorder. It's pretty much an inherent autistic trait that can manifest in several different ways. So, in the context of conversation and communication and connection with the neurodivergent community, I'd love to hear, if you were in my situation, how would you handle this right now? Because obviously, I know logically that it is absolutely silly for me to now suddenly throw away / donate, all my clothes that are perfectly fine and were not part of the laundry incident. And I'm also just feeling really overwhelmed at the prospect of, finding new clothing items now that many of my favorite items are unwearable. So how am I coping? What am I doing? Because obviously I'm here talking to you, blowing off some steam. Blowing off some steam in the context of laundry. No pun intended. That's actually kind of funny. Aside from this and kind of, processing everything as I'm speaking to you, I also went outside for a very long walk today, and I knew I needed to go on a walk because that is my form of regulation. Movement is my form of regulation. I, again, pacing and moving and standing up and pretty much just not wanting to sit down a lot of the time too, commonly seen as eating disorder behaviors, but this is something that many autistic people need. We need to move. Again, not all autistic people, but I know that I need that, and I've been that way ever since I was a child, meaning it was before the eating disorder. So a lot of the quote-unquote compulsive movement that I was banned from doing while I was recovering from my eating disorder, I think my journey would have been made a lot more neurodiversity affirming if I was allowed to move my body and then perhaps, have some more food alongside that. So yeah, I like nothing's really coming up in my brain anymore, meaning I think that's a good sign that I talked about everything I wanted to talk about today, in the sense, how this laundry disaster gave me insight into certain things that I did during my eating disorder that weren't necessarily just eating disorder behaviors, but were rather just manifestations of desperation and nervous system overstimulation. And I feel like I talked about so many things and I went into so many directions. So yeah, I really hope that you gained insights from this episode. Whether you are a neurodivergent person, I hope that you resonated with anything I said or everything I said maybe. If you're a caregiver or professional listening to this because you want to better support a neurodivergent person you care for, I hope that, something or everything or few things I said have given you insight to, be more compassionate. And if you did get anything from this episode, whether that just be resonating with my lived experience or gaining insights onto how you can make your journey more neurodiversity affirming, I would so appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple iTunes, or if you feel so inclined to also leave a rating and review on Apple iTunes as well as on Google reviews, because I now have a Google business profile, which if you just Google Live Label Free, you can leave a rating and review for me. So, even separate from this podcast, if you've enjoyed any content I've ever put out, including my books or any of my Instagram content or any of my YouTube videos, I would so appreciate it if you can share the love. It helps other people to find me and find my content so more people can become aware of this very prevalent connection, which is neurodivergence and eating disorders. And if you are not already, make sure that you are subscribed to the Live Label Free podcast, whether this be on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening, to get your weekly dose of neurodiversity-affirming eating disorder recovery content. Thank you so much for listening. I really, really appreciate you, and I love you, and I'm sending you so much loving and abundant energy. I'll talk to you in the next episode. Bye-bye for now.
Baby, just one foot in front of the other, and you'll see